Welcome to Taking the Higher Road, a special show dedicated to the trucking industry, primarily around the confluence of recruiting, retention, and compliance. In the 5th year as the host of the show, I bring over 2 decades of industry experience, both on the carrier side as well as the vendor side. Throughout the year, I interview industry experts and thought leaders who bring their insight to the driver lifecycle as we discuss the industry's greatest challenges. I always appreciate your feedback, good or bad. Don't forget to leave a rating and a review. I'd also like to thank and highlight the show's valuable sponsors. Their dedication and commitment to the industry and to the show is greatly appreciated. If you're interested in being a sponsor of the show or joining me for an interview, please email Jeremy at takingthehigherroad.com. Now, this week, I'm excited to have back a very close friend who's also a genuinely wonderful human being, Jason Douglas, VP of Operations for James H. Clark & Son. Jason, it's been over a year since we last connected on the show, so thanks for joining me again.
Yeah, thanks, Jeremy. A lot has happened on my end since then in the year and your end. There's been a lot of things, a lot of changes, all positive, and thanks for having me back.
Let's dive into some of that. So you're now the VP of Operations for, I don't know if you call it JHCS, but that sounds good. What do you call it?
Well, we're doing kind of a soft rebrand without rebranding, so we just kind of shortened it to JHC. Just JHC trucking without really changing anything. But I worked here for almost 11 years previous before I went to Stokes. The reason why I came back was because new ownership took over. He wanted me to come and kind of control the recruiting and operations process. And it's been a great opportunity for me. And where I left them to where we're back now is awesome. I couldn't be happier. I love Stokes. I've never quit a job that I loved before. Until then, we remained friends with those guys. I had unfinished business to do here. The owner told me, you've got drivers here that are waiting for you to come back, office employees that only you are fit for to help them move forward. So
that's a change since the last time we met. You were a finalist earlier this year for Recruiter of the Year. You recently graduated from the inaugural Elevate TCA leadership class. And then you've also been speaking at various events throughout the country. But with all that positivity, I know there's been some challenges, right? That's just how life works.
Sure.
I know you've been nursing an injury that's significantly sidelined you from really all the activity that you're known for. So I'm hoping we can get a little real about that. And then just as well as some of the personal challenges you've faced and overcome with addiction. We'll get into that. Mental health is super important, and we can dive into that also at least a little bit during the industry health segment, which is sponsored by Project 61. So are you ready to get cranking?
Let's do it.
All right. Well, you're also a member of the trucking industry's only book club, at least that I know of. It's a group I started in January 2025. We've got about 80 participants so far. So towards the end of today's conversation, I'll ask you for a book recommendation. So just kind of keep that in mind. But in the meantime, let's start with you. So you've done a great job of being connected, being dialed into the industry, very active on LinkedIn, great network. And instead of asking you how you got into trucking, like I know you answered that, I think, in our first interview, I'd like to get a little bit more personal. So you're a husband. I met your wife. You're a father. You've got a number of kids, right? So let's talk about you and your family. How many children do you have, and how old are they?
Family-wise, I married my high school sweetheart. We've been married for 15 years. We've been together for 20. We have 4 kids. So I have 6-year-old twins, a boy and a girl. My wife wouldn't go for Luke and Leia. I tried. And then I have a 9-year-old and a 12-year-old. So between twinning, soccer, one of my kids is kind of a geek, which it's funny how that comes around, right? We call them a geek when we're younger. And then when we're an adult and we watch their brain work and figure this stuff out, it's amazing. I'm watching him program 3D printer stuff, and kids might call that a geek or a nerd. And I'm just like, do it again, you know? And he's obsessed with, we talked about how he's obsessed with the Titanic, and like, it's crazy to be a parent and see that, you know, some of the things maybe that you had a different perception of when you were a kid versus when you're a parent now. I don't care if you're the best stapler. If you watch your kids staple and that's what they love to do, I only say that because there's a stapler right here. But.
Right. It's not a normal question I ask, you know, about something, but I know you and I are close enough. I know that you're okay with sharing that. You're pretty open with who you are, your family. There's a blend of business and personal. That's trucking, and you personify that well. So first of all, congrats on a great year, right? You've accomplished a lot. I know you're just getting started, but I know this has been a pretty challenging environment in the industry. But even with that, you've been able to overcome, you know, especially with recruiting and culture. Can you share, like, what's your recipe for success in winning in the recruiting game, especially in a down market?
One thing that we did at Stokes, and Stokes is a classy operation, we were able to dial that down to an industry low turnover. Instantly, since I came back here in October, we were at 35 drivers and 55 trucks, and now we're at 65 drivers and 65 trucks. So we've only had 3 people quit since I've been here, and I think it's the foundation. You build that foundation. There's no secret sauce. That's why I love sharing it. And I think I'm not afraid to tell everybody it because it makes the industry better. So things like on-duty time, you'll hear me talk about that. That's one thing that we've changed. Every time that I've talked about that on TikTok or something like that, it goes viral. Our guy's like, well, he called me one time at night and he's like, you have 2,000 messages. When I started talking about paid on duty and paying hub miles and the sick days and things like that, they're normal things for people like you and me that show up. You want a driver to go fuel a truck for free because that's part of the job. What if he gets hurt? That's covered under workers' comp, so he's working. So it's like there's all these things that have been overlooked. I've had multiple. I bet I've had 10 people. I spoke about it on another podcast about paying on duty time. And I've had probably 10 people reach out. Hey, how do you do this? We've wanted to do this forever. So if it becomes a trend and other people start doing it and I'm competing against that and it makes the industry better, I'm all for it. I've wanted it for such a long time. I hope it becomes a trend because they deserve it.
And I think it says a lot about you and your heart and spirit, but also in trucking, especially in safety, definitely there's no secrets. Everybody wants to help everybody. And I just came from a safety conference and this is all the stuff that we're talking about. And it's sharing best practices because at the end of the day, nobody wants to see people getting hurt or worse. And so from that perspective, I think that's great. But it's also no surprise that with that attitude that you have, you were a finalist for Recruiter of the Year. It was this past February at Conversion Interactive's Recruiting and Retention Conference in Nashville. Can you share a little bit about just what that experience was like?
It was really cool, to be on this panel and be a part of that on the biggest stage, with names like Chris Schultz and Kimberly Dangle, big names, big companies. So coming from a small fleet to be on a stage with, 10,000 trucks, 50, whatever they had, was pretty cool. Because that's not only a testament to me, I didn't do all that myself. There's a company and everyone else involved that does things. So it's cool to kind of get those ideas and hear from everybody else. And you're right, with that safety mindset, everybody wants to share, and then recruiting gets a little more tight niche. And I'm like, man, we're all stealing each other's drivers anyway. Let's help each other hire the right people, then the churn stops. So if we start doing that, and we find out what works for you, like I'll send Stokes drivers, I'll send people that live on Salt Lake. I'll be like, you're not a good fit for us, but will you call these guys? They can get you home every Friday. It works so much better that way because I already know he's not going to last a long time here. We're not the right fit for him. So why not send him somewhere where he's going to be, fill their truck, slow their churn, and thus slowing the churn in the industry.
I also want to touch on your experience with TCA's Elevate Leadership Group. This was the first year that they did it, and you were in that inaugural group, right? What was that experience like? And is that something you'd recommend to others, up and coming leaders in the industry?
Absolutely. It's such a cool program, and Eric Ribard is the perfect person to lead that. He's like, if you're a new person in the industry and he's always around at every TCA event and you want to get to know somebody, he's just there, walking around. Perfect person to go and start chatting to. So if you show up to one of these events by yourself, Eric leads the Elevate program. He's the man for the job. And then networking with people. This last year has been awesome. People I've been able to reach out to, getting to have friends. We're bringing up this industry together. So we have the same viewpoint, doing the call on Washington with everybody, really building this camaraderie. And then we're really going to be the ones that are putting the legislation and to help bring that up and fight the fight that we all are in right now for trucking. So I will never miss another call on Washington if I can help it because of that. And I might not have gotten that opportunity if it wasn't for Elevate. And then the same with some of the people that I became friends with.
With experiences like that, you had opportunities to kind of share your story and some of the challenges that you faced. And some of those, have resonated really well. I know you've talked about your battle with addiction. You shared that at TCA's annual conference in Phoenix and how you were able to overcome that addiction, right? Why is it important to you to share about your struggles and how does that resonate with the audience?
I think trucking's pretty well connected with alcohol. I don't think that's the secret. There's events, it's a hard job. People relax on the weekend with alcohol. There's no shade my way thrown towards anybody that drinks. I go out with my friends and they have drinks. Unfortunately, it's something I'm not allowed to have anymore because I don't have an off button. And luckily, nothing bad happened. I was not the best version of myself. I hit 40 years next month. Everything has quadrupled for me in personal net worth, mental net worth, physical net worth, whatever you want to call it. It's just everything has been so much better for me. Part of that's been running, but I'm injured. I had surgery on my leg here. I got my half man, half robot going on. In the past, I can tell you right now, that would lead to me drinking as well. It sucks so bad that I can't run right now. I'm mentally so much stronger that I'm still waking up, doing push-ups, doing sit-ups, reading, whatever it may be to keep myself going. I'm not this depressed blob in the corner. Sure, there's moments we're not all at our highest peak, but it taught me to overcome adversity and be stronger than the moment and think of the big picture of 6 months from now when I am qualifying for Boston and doing these things that are important to me.
Well, I think when you share those stories and you share your background, your past, people, they can relate in some cases, right? And also they know that like, hey, we all have different challenges that we're dealing with. And I think it's very open, it's honest, it's real. And I think it's important. People, they trust, right? When you have those sorts of conversations and you're willing to be open and vulnerable and share, you can build a really strong relationship. And what I was going to ask also on top of that is, you said that not every day you're going to be at your peak. And I know we're human, right? So what do you do when you're not? How do you sort of do what you can to stay dialed in then?
It's a mindset that that I've accepted the fact that tomorrow is going to come no matter what, whether you're happy, you're sad, you're depressed. Tomorrow's coming. You're not always going to be motivated. You're not always going to be that, but you have a job to do and you might as well show up for it and try to be the best version of you that you can, which might only be a B that day, but normally maybe you'd be a D minus, but the best version of you that day is a B, which is much better than that D minus. So I've noticed one thing for me that it brings up everyone else around me. Being able to implement an EAE program, my goal was if I just helped one person. So if I just helped one person be a better father, be a better husband, be a better them, whatever it may be, I've done my job. Even if I do this and talk about it for 20 years and it helps one person and it spans down through their bloodline, I would be ecstatic because I know what it's done for me and my family. Just one person is everything.
This is what I'll say about you too, just because of our relationship. There's times where I think sometimes we need each other, right? Sometimes when you're challenged, you just need others. I mean, we're social animals. Humans need each other. We need community. And I appreciate that you are certainly that for me from time to time. And I know that I can be that for you from time to time. And I think that's so important. And there's a lot of us that are, people listening to this show, people who are in the industry that we know that we're close friends with, that also you have that relationship with, that we can help each other, we can support each other. And I think that's super important also.
Yeah, and I think that's why like my network has grown the way that it has is if we're not people that get along, we're not going to talk very much. That doesn't mean I don't like you, but if we're not gelling or whatever and we don't have the same goals, we probably don't hang out in the same circles. But there's so many people that I have genuine conversations with that are just amazing people. It's way too many to name on this show that I've just been so fortunate to meet through, whether it be TCA, that's been a big part of my growth is TCA. So all that Elevate program and volunteering through that and doing the call on Washington and handing out badges and meeting everybody that checks in on events and being part of some of the committees, and it just grows and grows and it's infectious and you're around people that are passionate. And when they find out you're passionate, then it just blossoms into this thing that's just the trucking industry, which, I've lost that passion before and I'm so glad I came back to find it.
At events like those, it's contagious. And also there's some really good people. And I say this all the time, but you can build relationships in trucking and you can build relationships that last a lifetime. You certainly got to invest. You got to put your heart out there, but they'll last a lifetime. You touched on mental health a little bit. I want to get back to that because I know in the show's industry health segment, which is sponsored by Project 61, there's a question related to mental health. And by the way, real quick, before we even dive into that, I just on Project 61, as I know you know very well, as you are a board member, one of the founding board members of Project 61, Definitely appreciate your help and support there. There's a lot of momentum in this area. I love that. I'm grateful that people are paying attention, that people are aware that an average life expectancy of 61 years old is not okay. And we can do better than that. We as an industry can do better than that, and we must do better than that. And so I appreciate your help and support there.
These are my friends driving down the road. These are the people that I've hired, the people on an insurance plan, the people that work for me, the people that work in this organization that we're building. We want them to live longer. I want them to be healthy. I want them to be happy. This wasn't even a topic until a couple of years ago. So it's crazy. I am happy to momentum, and so many people are coming into this space, and everyone that's coming into this space, there is no competition between anybody. In this case, we are all your friend and your ally, and we all need to come together to do something.
Yeah, absolutely. We've got to work together. The mission is a lot bigger than any of one of us. That's super important. So from a mental health standpoint, here's the question. How much of a concern should mental health be for truck drivers? We talk about food. We talk about, a lot of times we're talking about fitness and things like that, but mental health, it doesn't get as much billing as I think it probably should. What do you think about that?
Been in the industry just over 17 years now, 18 years. You talk to anybody that had the various positions that I have, ask them to tell you a story where a driver's been stressed and freaked out and had a shipper call on them or a truck stopper. It's a regular thing. No shade towards that driver. It's a stressful job. You know, something can drive him for 11 hours. You're late. Your wife is calling you. Your house payment to due. Your kid's sick. Somebody broke their arm. You're going to be behind. You're thousands of miles across the country, and all of this is all happening simultaneously while you're late for an appointment that's going to make you sit while you're not getting paid. Who doesn't that affect mentally? That affects you mentally. It affects me mentally. It's a hard job. So I think it's as important, if not more important. I've learned from me, I've watched my physical shape and my speed and my running and everything change when I fixed my mind. So it's not necessarily that it was this big caveat of he's depressed and blah, 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 and nobody's had eggshells around him. But I do use an EAP because I believe in it. I saw a therapist for 2 years, and whatever anybody wants to poke fun, I don't really care at all. It made a much better me, and this version of me stands strong and tall. That's why I implemented it for post-accident where drivers might need it. I've implemented it for their spouses if they need it. We've implemented it for their kids to a certain age. It gets a little trickier on that, but for their family, marriage stuff, people need help and they need to talk through these problems, and they haven't given a big enough platform. And so I'm really glad that through COVID, mental health took a bigger stance, but drivers kind of got forgotten about, and they're still isolated in this truck. So we owe it to them to provide somewhere for them to talk to. Like mine can be a Zoom meeting for the drivers. It can be in person, or it can just be a phone call. Some of them don't want to do that. And once I share my story that, hey man, I was there 2 years before I got sober, they're like, what? Really? You went to a therapist for 2 years? I was like, yeah, I did. And you know what? It saved my life. It saved so many different things. My kids' lives are going to be different because I went through therapy.
I think it's so important, and I'm glad you said that about addressing it versus thinking that it's not okay, like you can't, try to get help. It's important. We need, again, as kind of going back to what we were talking about before, we need other people. We need help sometimes. My kids are huge Imagine Dragons fans, and he's been very vocal about, hey, it is not weak to go and get help. Like, it's okay. Like, you should do it. It's important. It's strong. It's brave. And so I think from that perspective, I like that message. I think that it's an important one.
It's one that we all need to listen to, because I can tell you right now, I could grit through it and be a little bit miserable and be a shell of myself for the rest of my life. I can tough through it, no problem. But I made the decision that I wanted to be better. And so that's the change in it. Do you want to be better? I mean, you can grit through it, be a tough guy, be a tough woman, whatever it wants. But if you truly want to get better and work out these problems, it's seeking help from professional people, and they do wonders. And drivers that I've had go through that program, especially post-accident, fatal accident, wasn't my driver's fault. I stayed up with him for 4 or 5 hours just talking to him, and I was able to get him into a counselor 2 days later on the weekend on a Sunday. And, 2 people just died in front of him. Not his fault, not even by it. He witnessed it, which is traumatic. And the help that he got is still, he's like, I needed that so much. Thank you so much. And that's not me, that's, the company, and that's the trained therapist doing that. Just a vessel in believing and helping provide that.
I appreciate that. And I know we're about out of time, but before we go, I definitely want to get back to that book recommendation. So is there a particular book that you've read that you'd like to share with the audience, something that's been impactful to you?
I'm going to get the name wrong because you've recommended two to me, but in your book club, the first book that we read this year, I've read both of them on your recommendation, but The Happiest Man on Earth, I'm not much of a reader. I've been better with the book club, not going to the gym this last couple weeks. I've just been listening to music at my house instead of a book. Runs is where I listen to the book. But anyway, The Happiest Man on the Earth is a book I would never have read if it wasn't for the book club. The people that survived and the people that didn't is what they grasped onto, and the hope that they had of who they would see again. And it really puts things into perspective. What do you have to live for? If you were in that situation, what hope would you have? What's my hope now every day when I leave my house? What am I fighting for? If I was taken away from more, what would bring me back? It hit kind of hard. Yeah, my children, my family, I would hold on to every last thread onto that as hard as I could. I was really glad I got to read that perspective, and how a terrible story hopefully helps so many people to change their perspective on things, of finding hope and holding on to that. And what I got out of it too was he was an opportunist. He put himself in situations to make life better for him as he went down. He got somewhere good, and then it just got tumbled back down, but then he opportunized his way back up to better life things. And so I thought that was pretty cool.
It was a great book. It was a fairly short read for anybody if not familiar with it. For context, he was an Auschwitz survivor. It was fantastic. And his attitude, I think, was and that mindset that he had. I mean, he was almost unshakable with just having a positive mindset. Very, very philosophical, very stoic, really, where look, there are things that happen outside of your control. You have no control over you. But what you can control is how you're going to respond, how you're going to think and behave. That's a great example of that. And there's so many.
I'm sitting here with a busted foot, can't run, had to cancel my race, had to cancel my other stuff. I've gained 15 pounds. I'm fine. I'll be all right. I'll shut it off here. But I'm not comparing that to anything, but you are what you make it.
Jason, thank you so much for joining me. Always enjoy spending time with you. Really appreciate our friendship, and look forward to seeing you again soon.
Likewise, man. Goes too fast.
Thank you for taking the higher road with me. Once again, special thanks to the sponsors of this show. We really appreciate you. If you're interested in being a sponsor or joining me for an interview, please email Jeremy at takingthehigherroad.com. Until next time, thank you for taking the higher road.